I was the first woman in the world to be elected president of a country. And it was not a political election, it was a referendum. The people elected me. And I admire the Icelanders to have had the guts to be the first, because they were very much aware of that.
One particular grouping in society needs special attention, and that is the women. For one thing, you hear a voice which you don't hear in male company alone. But two, even where the male composition of committees and so on discuss issues, the impact on women and children of decisions and proposed legislation is not so very clear until you hear the woman's voice and analysis. Yes, definitely. That makes for a balanced legislation and a balanced process of implementation.
In the first cabinet after democracy was recovered in Chile, there was one woman in the cabinet. Then we have three. And then there was an expansion when I assumed the presidency. And let me tell you that by the end of my government, because many women had the opportunity to work with me in the cabinet, they were well known. And at the very end, who was going to be the successor of President Lagos? Well, two leading women, members in the cabinet, one's Minister of Defense, the other Minister of Foreign Affairs, and finally the decision was taken among those two. And it seems to me that never appeared the question of, but really, seriously, do you think a woman can be president? And I think that the reason why that question never emerged was because the two best positioned persons in the country from the point of view of the government coalition were women. And therefore, the discussion never arose. And I think that it was important. And at the end, Michelle Bachelet got the nomination from our coalition. And finally, she was elected president to succeed my term.
Research shows that when you have women in legislative bodies, that the agenda changes, that they tend to address issues relating to family and children and women, which are very, very important. And men agree they're important too. I think what's really interesting when you bring women into legislative bodies is that they do change the culture. And they change what's an acceptable issue to discuss. And that's often very liberating for men. And often very educational for men, because you can't expect men to understand every aspect of the reality of life as women live it. Women need to be there, and they need to exchange, and women learn a lot from the men. I mean, it's part of creating a decision-making body that reflects the reality of society, and it isn't just gender, it's race and class, all of these things that need to have the reflection.
I want to emphasize that men also have to stand up and fight for the rights of the women. We cannot leave this to the women alone. And my experience from Norway was that when some men stood up and joined the women in their fight, then things started to happen. And the rights were more and more implemented. And this is a question of participation, equal participation in political life, in business life, in civil society. And I do believe, despite I was in doubt in the beginning, but now I do believe that we need also, as one means, the quota system, at least for an interim period, to increase the participation of women. This is a question of human rights, because women have the same right as men to participate in public life, but it's also a question of bringing into the policy making the dimension which the women very often represent. They can see some issues from another perspective than we men do. And we really need this female perspective.